Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Iron Radio. This is Phil Stevens. I'm a strength coach, powerlifter, Highland Games athlete, and amateur boxer.
Ooh.
Dr. Mike Nelson, associate professor at the Carrick Institute, creator of the Flex Diet and PhysFlex certifications. And yeah, I'll probably be running Flex Diet mentorship again coming up too for people interested in more of the business and how to do online training from mindset to business to exercise selection, etc.
Cool.
Yeah.
This is Coach Jarrell out of Strength Guild in Olathe, the last bastion of strength guild training.
He always gets that in.
He does. Proud of it.
Yeah, and this is Lonnie Lowry. I'm a food industry consultant, adjunct prof, former competitive bodybuilder.
There we go. So you had a study today you wanted to talk about, Lonnie. Caffeine and coffee, the differences?
Yeah, this is something that I had posted on the ISSN page. They have a Facebook group, and I posted it on the Iron Radio listeners group. It just sort of fits. I mean, I have to be careful about confirmation bias. We like to hear things that agree with what we think, but I'm not going to do the deep dive here with I'm pulling the full study and everything. I just thought I would talk about this one. This is from the Independent publication in the UK. Drinking coffee gives a quote-unquote special boost to the brain beyond its caffeine content, study finds. Now, let me preface this. I think this is what's getting a lot of attention online. It can be interpreted in different ways. I've seen different related articles that say, oh, maybe this just means that coffee gives you more of a boost because of some placebo effect. Another explanation could be that it's the sensory aspect of coffee, like it's lighting up areas of the brain, because this is all about functional MRI, and the blood flow and the oxygen flow and everything to the different parts of the brain, metabolic activity. So maybe it's sensory. I mean, there are things in coffee like aromatic kinds of things like diterpenes and things like that give the smell and the experience. Maybe it's experiential. Or from my perspective, it may be that there are other things in coffee that aren't caffeine, right? Because what these guys did was they gave habitual coffee drinkers a cup of coffee, and I've been poring over exactly how they defined that, and I don't see it right now. But they gave them a cup of coffee, or they gave them caffeine and caffeine pill, basically in hot water, kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
But let me set this up. It says, the boost people get from drinking a cup of coffee can't be replicated with plain caffeine, reveals a new study that found additional areas of the brain are activated by the hot beverage. Researchers, including those from the University of Minho in Portugal, examined whether the wakefulness effect of coffee is dependent only on caffeine or if other factors are at play. They found that caffeine only partially reproduces the effects of drinking a cup of coffee, and they published this in a recent journal, Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience. It says, while caffeine boosted areas of the brain that make one feel more alert, and I mean, of course, Mike was part of a position paper on caffeine, coffee brought additional effects on brain areas that affect working memory and goal-directed behavior. Again, these were habitual coffee drinkers. They put them in an MRI unit either before or 30 minutes after. They either did the caffeine and water or the coffee. They actually did this during a relaxed state. Now, I want to see this done because it affects like the readiness to move, if you will. I want to see this in a pre-workout setting, to be honest, but because these guys were relaxed. It says consuming both coffee and caffeine led to a decrease in nerve connectivity in the brain's default mode network. So you could think of this like efficiency. Some levels of activity, maybe it's good to go down, others it's good to go up. Anyway, decreased activity in the areas involved with introspection and self-reflection. It says, however, researchers said this change could indicate people are more prepared to move from resting to working on tasks. However, they said drinking coffee may have additional benefits of increasing the connectivity in the brain's more advanced nerve network, controlling vision, as well as working memory, cognitive control, and goal-directed behavior. I might do a deep dive in this elsewhere, but for right now, like I said, I think this is floating around with different interpretations. My thought would be that, yeah, there's lots of stuff in coffee other than caffeine, like chlorogenic acid and other things. I can tell you, I've seen direct studies where they fed people just chlorogenic acid, and it excited areas of the brain and, affected cognition and all that kind of stuff. So coffee's not just liquid caffeine, I'm fond of saying. But also, I'm not sure I agree with the placebo effect. If they are, in fact, pointing to this same study, because this group does similar work. But if you're smelling the coffee and there's all these components in the coffee and that kind of stuff, if that's going to boost performance as part of a pre-workout ritual, good. I don't look at that as like, oh, well, this is just placebo, in the fact that placebo is some kind of null effect and there's nothing special about coffee. I would say, well, then placebo or not, whether it's inhaled substances, you don't just have to swallow it necessarily, in my opinion. It goes up your nose. I've actually had students do research on this kind of stuff. Yeah, but even on a personal level, this reinforces the kind of thing that Fortress and I used to do. We'd sit around and split a pot of coffee and watch metal and just try to get into it, But I just think this is neat in that. Phil, you've heard me say this over the years, and Mike, you and I have talked about this too. It's just coffee, I think, is a good pre-workout instead of just popping a pill. I think this reinforces that. So.
Yeah. I mean, it could be as simple as, like, we all know that like an ECA stack is more effective than one of those ingredients by itself. And there just could be other things in coffee that are like synergistic with each other. And we just we're not smart enough human beings yet to realize it. So.
Yeah. Well, there's hundreds of compounds, it's like, this sort of entourage effect, like you hear about with cannabinoids and stuff. Maybe there's something going on there. I mean, I think from the supplement world, there's been a ongoing sort of debate that, do you want to standardize extract, like take one compound out of a herb and just concentrate the bejesus out of it and serve that? Or do you want the whole herb? Because it's not nice to fool with Mother Nature. You might get more out of the whole herb. So when I was a grad student, I was all about the standardized extracts, but maybe there's something a little more hippie to it,
Yeah, I mean, well, you hit a nail on the head right there. I mean, that's with the CBD versus whole plant, like, big difference. I mean, well, and they're proving more and more, even with the CBD stuff, that they want that. It's like the latest stuff I've seen is leaning towards full spectrum,
Yeah.
And things like that. Like, there's something else going on there with a lot of natural compounds that is beyond one ingredient that's in that compound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the bugger is the unreliable companies that'll stuff anything into a pill and then put on the label that, well, we didn't standardize it because it's the whole herb and it's some ground up, like God knows what that they put in there. So then do you have to do a genetic analysis of it? How are you going to prove to other people that what you said is on the label is actually in there, which by law you're required to. But I just read a study the other day that analyzed some companies selling on Amazon, and they weren't really, I would say, top, highly reputable companies, but when they did an analysis of just basic stuff like CoQ10 and things we can identify real well, some of the companies had nothing in the capsules. Some had less than 10%. I mean, it wasn't like you were off by a few percentage and you didn't do your overages right. Like, you were not even in the ballpark.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
We saw that years ago with vitamins and stuff, with big brands.
Yeah, it's a whole nother problem about meeting label claims and that kind of stuff. And, it's relative to the coffee, too. It's part of the art and the crapshoot to all this, like in finding out your pre-workout, ritual or what you're going to consume, if anything. Because, I mean, a cup of coffee, what does that mean? Beans from all over the world, roasted different ways, ground up and brewed in different ways.
Mike, didn't you say once before that you guys can't even use coffee and caffeine studies that often because each cup is so different?
Yeah.
In terms of like the actual caffeine content?
Yeah, that's a pain in the ass of some of the research. And Lonnie's done this research, obviously, is that the caffeine amount compared to coffee, compared to anhydrous, compared to pre-workouts. So a lot of times in studies, they will, try to standardize a type of coffee. But an older study from McCusker where they sent a grad student to Starbucks every day for like 4 days in a row, and they got like a medium grande. So they got the same coffee, the same Starbucks location, within a 2-hour window each morning for 4 days. And they analyzed it for caffeine content. And it was, I don't remember the range. I want to say it was like something like 350 milligrams was a high end, like 220 was a low end or something.
Yeah.
It was very variable. I mean, it was, if you look at milligrams, like you saw differences of up to 100 milligrams potentially.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a couple milligram difference. It was a pretty huge difference. And like Lonnie said too, that's not accounting for bean type, grind type, location, brew method. Like this is Starbucks, who is trying to make every cup of coffee everywhere in the world the same, whether you like it or not. And so, so for athletes, like, I think most people, if you're using coffee pre-workout or whatever, I think that's fine. That's part of a ritual. I like that. If I'm doing something that's highly calibrated, or especially with endurance athletes, we're using multiple doses, and we want to try to replicate something, unfortunately for that, I almost always use anhydrous caffeine, because I know what happens. I made this mistake before. Guy goes to a race. He's like, well, I just got my double espresso from the local place. And then it's either no response, or when they're caffeine sensitive, it was too much. And then, it just kind of messed them up. So I just switched to using anhydrous caffeine for those particular places where you need to have a higher level of precision.
Yeah, my formulation was Via.
I
gave Phil a couple packs of that once, right? Not only is it strong, it's got like 2.5 times the caffeine of typical instant coffee, but it's plus or minus 3 milligrams in a packet. It's 164, I think, plus or minus 3, and that's so much better than trying to brew coffee with any, like Mike said, any precision. So.
I mean, that goes back to the problem with anything natural. That was the original problem with ephedra. With ephedra was the HCl tablets, they were standardized, whereas the plant wasn't. I mean, one plant has a shitload, one plant, so you had people accidentally or on purpose taking too much. So
this would be a good way to look at brewed decaffeinated coffee, right? Because that may get at some of the other effects of the coffee independent of the caffeine. If they, do a follow-up study, it would be cool to see.
Yeah, that in fact, the researchers said that. I'm going to talk about this with a student on the Nutrition Radio podcast. I think do a little deep dive here that doesn't bore people, but that's exactly what they said. That we really we're not accounting for other control. It's it's like anything else in research, as you know, Mike, is what is the comparison you're trying to make. And here they're just trying to say, what about caffeine versus coffee? And but then again, it opens up all these interpretations, sensory, other components. I don't think I agree with other people online saying, oh, it's just a placebo effect that's lighting up these other areas of the brain. I don't know if I'd call that a placebo effect. I understand what they're saying, but it's like Dawn Anderson has said for a long time, and Mike, you and I have used it in the lab. You really need 3 groups when you do coffee research. You need the coffee, you need the decaf, because it's got all the other goodies in it. Yeah. And then you need the caffeine or even just water. Even
I was going to say you'd need 3 or 4. Yeah. Because I could see the placebo effect being huge if you had like just a decaffeinated caffeine group, but people didn't know it was decaf.
Yep.
Yeah. So you'd have to have caffeinated coffee versus decaf coffee versus placebo.
Oh, like deception.
Yeah. I mean, if you just told people we're giving you a cup of coffee and you gave them decaf,
they'd still be jazzed.
Yeah, I bet they still. It's just like the people. If you tell, we've heard stories of like guys told them they gave them drugs, steroids, and they didn't, and they were like, "Dude was training his ass off and got jacked," and I gave him fucking sugar pills.
Right. That's right.
So perception is a powerful tool. So
absolutely. And there was a brand new study. I haven't read it yet, and unfortunately, I don't have the title in front of me about the neurobiology of the placebo effect that just came out the other day. So I'll have to find the title. I didn't pull it yet because it wasn't open access, but renewed research in that area for sure.
about 5 years ago, there was a paper, they were using it with pain pills, but they were calling it, it was like, we were calling it in the lab, the 50% anticipation, right? Because when you do a typical control group like a decaf coffee, it's still a special brown hot liquid. So you're still like, even when you're told this could be decaf, it could be real, they still have 50% anticipation. Hey, maybe this is the real deal. I'm going to go tear it up in the gym.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to water, which there's no anticipation, and man, nobody wants to be in that group in a study. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we can move on to the topic. Take a little break here, and we'll be right back.
Hey, everybody. Iron Radio is back, and in an expanded way. What can you expect? Well, first, you can get it simulcast every week on the nutritionradio.org network, as well as on the original podcast. It'll appear regularly on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite podcasting sites. We have a new Iron Radio / Nutrition Radio Facebook page as well. Please check us out. We're even backed up on YouTube. Second, please tell your friends who are longtime loyal listeners that they may see emails that share just the episode link and the show notes. This is a new thing, and we hope it will build community. Third, if you were a supporting member in the past, we may prompt you to resume through PayPal, but we will confirm each and every donor before reinstating that membership category. We'll never just restart your $4 auto payments without agreement from you. And of course, we will accept new members moving forward as well. Starting back slowly and honorably is the goal. And lastly, expect the sister show Nutrition Radio to expand into once weekly 45 to 60-minute episodes with guest co-hosts covering the same nerdy nutrition news that's been broadcast for a few months now in daily 10-minute clips. We hope that an expanded presence will get you the news, education, banter, and guests that's made Iron Radio's community so loyal from the start. You are appreciated.
Hi, guys. We're back. And what I wanted to talk about today was, I think we touched on it before, but maybe go a little more in depth. I wanted to talk about training through injuries or aches and pains, and like there's various levels of them. There's things that you need to train through. There's things you need to train around, and then there's times that you just need to just don't do anything. And what's made me think of this is, well, I'm battling yet another injury, but so I tore my plantar fascia again.
Oh.
This time on the other foot.
Oh.
Doing boxing. Well, we were running ladders, and my big old ass probably shouldn't be running ladders like that, or at least ease into it a bit more. And it was on exactly the last rep of the last ladder. And I bounced forward. You know, we're bouncing around on our toes like freaking little bunny rabbits, and I'm a 250-pound bunny rabbit. But on the last one, it felt like I got hit in the bottom of the foot with a paintball gun or something. I literally thought something hit me. And I'm looking around for it. I was like, nope. Oh, okay, I know what that was.
Oh.
Luckily, I've done it before. It's just a couple weeks of just, there's not much you can do for it. You know, they sell a little boot you can put on and whatnot. Yeah. But, so, I mean, it got me thinking, so what am I doing? Like, I didn't just stop training. I just find out each day what causes zero pain. And I do that. Mm-hmm. Like, my Highland Games is out the window. Except for, like, this week I was able to, on our weight for distance, basically it's a heavy weight on the end of a chain. You have to spin in circles and throw it. Basically, all I can do is cast it. I can't do any spinning in a circle. And then I have a client right now who is, basically he aggravated an elbow at his last meet, which was about a month ago. And it's been killing him ever since. And, like, every training like I get is, yeah, training today, elbow hurt a lot during this, kind of did this instead. And I got like numerous of those in a row. And it's like, it's probably time that we just don't do anything that hurts, you know, is what I suggest. And, which is hard for people.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he's got another meet in like 4 months, and it's making them realize that, you know, our best bet now at 16 weeks out is, even if you just have to totally take time off, we're going to do whatever we need to do, whatever it is to get you out of pain. Because I mean, that's the big one for me with people is like, it's hard to be strong if you hurt. That's number one. Number one, you need to be pain free, because I mean that can be. There's a time and place. That's not saying I haven't lifted through pain at a meet or something, but that's a different area. I mean, there's a time and place for it. He's talking about basically what he's going to end up doing is you're going to, instead of taking 1, 2, 3 weeks off, however long it takes, you're going to stack together 16 weeks of shitty training because you never let this thing just heal itself, if that makes sense. And that's a hard thing for people to realize. It's the whole, 2 steps back to take 5 steps forward thing. So I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on this? And I have some other, like, there's different, just in my own life, I've had different ways. Like, there's different times and places. Like with my hip, for instance, I was in lots of pain. And so I finally, what did I do? Okay, it's time to get checked up and figure out what this is. So I went and got x-rays and MRIs and stuff, and it was like, oh, okay, well, you're bone on bone in your hip. And then it's okay. So I met with the orthopedic, and he's like, well, his suggestion was, because I was like 30 at the time, go as long as you can, because the hip replacements have a limited life. And he's like, you can't. And I just got the okay to keep going, because basically what he said was, your hip is fried and need replaced. You can't like fry it to the point it can't get it replaced. In 8 years, it's still going to need replaced, type of thing.
Yeah.
So there's a different, and that basically it gave me an orthopedic reason to, okay, go ahead and push this. It's just pain. There was no work.
You know exactly what you're doing.
I knew exactly what I was doing. I can't hurt it more.
Right.
And that's what you need to go get checked out. What is going on? Okay, here's what's going on. Can I hurt it more by keeping going? Or can I help it by not? And like, I wasn't going to help it by stopping. It wasn't going to grow back cartilage. So.
Right. My left knee is like that. I was going to ask you, Mike, about neural. How much of this is mechanical versus like neural shutdown? From
a lot.
A lot.
A lot. Yeah. Mostly, right?
So this is another one of my pet peeves, and why I don't participate in any of these discussions online, is the old school biomechanics only people are like, well, it's the tissue itself, it's aggravated, it's blah 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 blah. And then you've got the sort of new school neurology only people are like, no, it's all just in your head, it's blah 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 blah. And the reality is, like, my buddy Adam Klotzek, who teaches the pain reset course for the Carrigan Institute, which is a great course, is that it's a neurobiomechanical model. The answer is it's both.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no matter how much you believe in neurology, and trust me, I love neurology. I'm an associate professor for a place that does all neurology stuff. If you broke something and something's missing, it doesn't matter, right? You have a mechanical issue.
Yeah.
On the other side, especially as you get into more chronic pain, you can definitely have issues where they've done every imaging known to man. Like, they mechanically can't find a single thing wrong. And you can have absolutely blinding pain too. So for me, that's how I view it. And what I look at then is, if we can do something, whatever that is, whatever modality, take your pick, and within seconds, it reduces the pain, that's probably more on the neurology side, assuming you're not just aggravating it. However, long term, if we can make changes to how you're loading and things like that, then it's probably more on the mechanical side. Right. So I'm always looking at both, because I'll have people that come in here and they're like, I've got this thing, this elbow's been hurting, it's been this way for, like 8 months, I've gotten every scan known to man, I've been to the doctor, been to a physical therapist, they say everything looks fine. Great. If they can leave pain free, cool. Then I know it was probably more on the neurology side. So that's kind of how I view it, because the reality is it's both. And these discussions about, which one it is and which one it's more of and all that stuff, to me is just not productive.
Yeah. I mean, for us, it depends on what part of the training cycle we're in.
Yeah.
The further we are from anything, the less likely I am to push through anything. And I will usually regress stuff back to like the lowest version of the movement that's essentially pain-free. So if we can, like, let's say, back squat is giving us trouble or whatever it is. And also when you go back down and build back up, you can usually fix a couple like technical errors that have developed. Like whenever you push to like new weights, you develop new technical errors that are minor, and you don't have to like fix them on the fly. But if there's like a resistance, or you end up with like some sort of ache and pain, and you go all the way back to essentially like the beginning and kind of build back up, then you can kind of fix it along the way a lot better without a huge amount of interference from, well, I would just say the client and so like client themselves trying to like push through things.
Mm-hmm.
So the further we are away, the less likely I am to like push through it. And so it kind of depends on the joint. Usually I'll find a few exercises that we will build through. I try to give them targets. Like once we get to this weight, even though this kind of depends on the client, because then they'll try to like force that exercise too, depending on who they are. So it kind of depends. But I'm like, once we get to here, pain free, then we'll start reintroducing that. And usually you can like, it's almost better if you kind of regress everything back to 0 and then build back up. I actually learned that from Sarah Robles when she was in town, because she said like pretty much after every big, national meet, worlds, Olympics, whatever, she like tries to relearn weightlifting. Mm-hmm. And like just start at 0 and like start with the empty bar and go through all the progressions again. And I've noticed that this helps quite a bit, like going through and like almost as like a true way to refine your technique. Now, if it's something like staying away from it altogether, like that is totally fine for me too. But handling that emotionally with the clients is always like,
that's hard.
That's
with all that.
Always the tricky part. But even for them, I think people have this idea that like they pushed so hard to get to this point, and that if they stop pushing, they'll just regress back to 0. But it doesn't work like that. Like once you pave the road, the road is paved. It might need some upkeep and stuff like that, but it's there. So it's there. We know it's there. We know you can hit this with X amount of training. You just have to trust that it's it's there. You don't have to like keep paving the road over and over and over again. Like you have to just trust that it's going to be there and give yourself time to kind of build back up. Plus, when you're pain free, you're more likely to attack things than you are when you're in pain. You'll essentially be on the defensive all the time when you're in pain.
Well, I was going to say the other hard part as a coach that we have to address is there's a variance in this and little injuries in elite athletes versus the average person.
Oh, yeah.
Because generally your elite athletes, they understand that you're always in pain, and they have a high pain tolerance. And they also, it's also gaining that, and I've talked about this before, lifting heavy maximal loads hurts. So you have to gain this, was it strain or was it pain? And that's hard to ID at the beginning. Like new lifters don't even know what that is. Like you'll just put something heavy on them and it hurts. And it's like, no, that's how 500 pounds is supposed to feel. It doesn't feel good. And that's a hard thing. Well, and then with high level athletes, when you're dealing with people squatting 800-900 pounds, like it fucking hurts. There's like, so it's hard for them to ID when it's the regular level of pain and something they need to back off from, because it just fucking hurts all the time. So for me, it was like with my athletes that have been doing it a long time, it's a lot of watching facial expressions and body language. Like, you're hurting, aren't you? Something's not right, because that's a different level of that look on your face, that way you moved, whatever is different than normal, even though it's, what you're doing in and of itself is inadvertently painful. I mean, but it's looking for that and knowing when to have clients back the hell off, especially higher level clients. And sometimes with lower level clients, that's harder because they don't have that. Like, you don't know, like, is this dude really in pain or is he just getting ready for a meet? Because we've talked about it before. Like, the worst I ever feel is like 2 weeks out from a meet. And that's what I tell people. I've had numerous people come to me, Coach, I feel like I get hit by a truck.
Perfect.
Well, we're 3 weeks out. That's how you're supposed to be. Type of thing. Good. You're right where we want you. That's the tough part, because I mean, what we're asking people to do, especially in strength sports, is not normal. It's not
normal.
Yeah,
right.
It's not pain free, and it's not normal. It's just like you talk to professional athletes, like they're in pain all season. They're never 100%. So.
Yeah, when in evolution are you regularly doing something like squatting or even picking up something that weighs more than 500 pounds? Like the human body is not really designed for that, I wouldn't think. It's outside of the normal requirements.
Yeah.
But you know what, Phil? You were talking about how elite athletes are used to this stuff. I think age comes into play here too, because when you're older, especially, I think, you're lifted your whole life and then you're in your 50s, like some of the people I know. It's like, I'm always hurt. Like, so what do how do I work around this? It's amazing what people are willing to tolerate, sort of, or dismiss. I remember teaching pathophys, and there was this case study about this person, they had lymphedema. Their limb was completely disfigured with, fluid retention, all this. And it's like, why did you wait so long? And this whole thing is, the lesson is, people are willing to tolerate ridiculous things if they can find workarounds, and it is a hard question. Like, how much of this, for me, it's always, is this age? Like, I had to stop doing any chest or back work for this past week, because I'm like, I'll just work through it, and then I'm thinking, why? Especially, I'm not getting ready for a meet or anything. So I'm like, I'll do arm work and do extra cardio, and I'm not really working on technique per se, like Olympic lifters and stuff. That's a great idea, actually. Focus on technique or something. But it's a hard call, and because honestly, if you wait a few weeks, I would argue more times than not, things probably resolve if they're just minor niggling things. Like, I know what's wrong with my shoulder. I mean, it hurts. I mean, you're talking like 6, 7 on a 10 scale. I mean, it freaking hurts. But if I leave it alone, it's just one of those things with experience I know will go away. I got to stop doing it, because I was trying to work through it, and I'm like, all right, this isn't working. I'm going to end up with more damage than not, But yeah, I think age is part of that discussion too.
100%. But it also goes in the other way. Like me at 46, I am much less apt to do what I did now than I was at 35. At 35, like, I got a torn labrum, it's never been fixed, and I got myself back up to benching 405. I knew I'd just hurt every night and sleep would be rough and things like that. Now I'm like, nah, not worth it. I just don't. My give a shit on there is down. Like, I'm always at that point. My people make fun of me. Like, I always just make sure I can bench 315. Like, my last 6 meets, I've benched a max of like 4 times before each meet, because I know if I just train it, I'll hurt. But as long as I can just do enough to maintain that, I don't look like an idiot. And that's not saying that I'd look like an idiot if I went in and benched 275, but it's just a personal standard to have.
Strategy.
Your floor.
It's my floor. It's like, okay, as long as you can do that, you can do a powerlifting meet. And I still look like an idiot, because I go in there and I squat like 770. And then they're like, your fucking bench is 500 pounds lower than your squat. But hey, it's like, whatever. I'm still doing it. So.
Right.
The only thing I would maybe add to essentially what we might do is, and a lot of times it's like I'm usually aware of it, and a lot of times weightlifting is the competitive side of things that I coach, but I'll look at like where the overall balance is in the program. And so in, like, we'll say weightlifting, like internal torque exercises for the shoulder, like, we don't do a lot of. And so if I'm noticing, the shoulder elbow type of thing for us, like sled rope pulls, where we're like pretty much biasing that with no eccentric and adding stuff like that in to get a ton of blood flow. Finding those little, imbalances in the programming itself, I'll look for that. And sometimes I'm pretty aware of like what's going on, because, as we get closer to a actual meet, like a nationals or something, I'm taking out assistance exercises. I'm taking out all the balance, and we are strictly focusing on the movements themselves. But if I kind of notice that there's like some aches and pains, like we can add it back in without, skipping a beat all the time. So sometimes I'll look for that, like find something like that, or for us, like grip and elbow stuff. So usually that's pronation type exercises that we'll start adding in kind of as finishers and stuff like that. So if I see an imbalance, I'll address that.
Yeah. Well, that's what we talked about earlier. The other thing to figure out too is, like, it doesn't mean, usually an injury doesn't mean complete like bed rest. You know, that's like with what I'm doing right now. I know, like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to squat today. I'll do what I can that doesn't hurt. And then we're going to throw. And there's only, basically what I've done is I've ID'd the parts that I can do. So it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to work, like working my cast with the heavy and lightweight causes zero pain. I can't do the rest of the move, but if I just do hundreds of those and try and perfect that, later on when I can do those, I've just spent lots of technique work in some little thing that might help in the long run. You might get ahead by, okay, well, I can't do this. Let's just go ahead and concentrate on this and make this part really good. There's always something else you can work on. It's like when I blew my biceps and things like that. It was like, okay, well, I could sit here and cry, or I can just work the other 3/4 of my body, that don't hurt. I mean, it's just, it makes sense to me. Like, it's don't quit focusing on what you can't do and put all your energy in what you can do. And at least those parts will go up. And then we can concentrate on bringing up whatever's lagging later once you can do that pain-free. So, I mean, there's ways to keep advancing through an injury. So,
there's an old Stoic concept about not worrying about things that are beyond your control. It's literally irrational. Like, if I can't do anything about it, my knee is like your hip was.
Yes.
I blew the medial meniscus. It may not be straight on bone, but it comes and goes pain wise, and eventually I'm gonna have to get a knee replacement. But I'm gonna use it as long as I can.
Yes.
Especially because I'm not a strength athlete in the way that you guys are. But you said something earlier, Phil, I just wanted to address quickly, which was you got to go get additional diagnostic information.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say right now.
Yeah, and I would argue, like when you blew your biceps, it made me think about when I blew my triceps. Both cases, right? Clean off the bone. I go to the ER, and longtime listeners might remember me bitching about this, but they gave me ibuprofen to set me home. I'm like, you guys, I tore it off the bone, like. Yeah. And so I called, and it's good to have a network. I know Mike has a huge network of different kind of functional med docs and mud floods and stuff that he leans into, and not everybody has that. But at the same time, try to get a referral to an actual sports orthopedist. Go to a sports med doc, because otherwise they're going to dismiss you. They're just doing their job. I mean, you could take a dump on them and be like, "Oh, jerk, you really misdiagnosed that." But when they don't do an MRI in the emergency room, I'm like, how are you going to know for what? So, yeah, I think you need, whether it's blood work, or usually in this case, it's MRI scans, stuff like that. You need additional information before you can make a decision about, I better take X number of weeks off here, or go to a PT or do whatever. I get it that sometimes they can't find anything, like Mike was saying. I'm not seeing anything structural, man. But I would say if you possibly can get a referral to a specialist, go do that. Get the information you need to make the right kind of decision. Because even if you're a physiologist or a trainer or a coach, no matter how good you are, you can't just start imagining things. You need to have an image, like an actual image that somebody knows what they're looking at to look at. That happened with my wife recently with her spine. Literally the ER doc's like, I think something might be off here. I'm not sure. And I'm like, what? Like, you're an MD. And they brought in the sports orthopedists, and then they were actual spine specialists. The one guy was, and he's just like, oh, I wish I would have just looked at this first. It's clearly this, and this. I'm like, oh, thank you. Because he had an image to look at, and he knew what he was doing. He was a specialist. Anyway.
No, but what you're getting at there is like I said, with my hip or your knee or my knee and things like that, it's the definition of a problem is like a problem has to have a solution. Like, and that's what you need to find out is your solution. Like with my hip, it ended up not being a problem because there was no solution. It was like, okay, there's nothing I can do to make this better or worse aside from massive surgery.
Right.
So I'm just going to block it out. Like you can't hurt it more. You can't. But I had to go find that out. I wouldn't know if I didn't go in. And then I was able to mentally shut it off. It was like, okay, doc says this, it's going to hurt. Can't hurt it worse. Okay, I can go. Then I was able to, like, in my mind, because I didn't know before that, like, am I hurting myself by keeping training? Do I need to take time off? Is that going to make pain go away? Once I find out it doesn't matter how much time I'm taking off, you're still going to be in pain. Well, I might as well be in pain and be strong. You know?
Yeah, better to get the info instead of just worrying. Yeah.
Instead of just worrying. And then, like with my bicep, I knew, okay, it's fucking blown. I just won't use it for 6 weeks. You know? So... But it's those injuries that you just don't know what the hell is going on. It's like eventually you need to go get information. Mm-hmm. Like find out what is wrong, and then we can ID. Like, is it a problem? Do we work around it? Do we work through it, or what? But we don't know that without going to see somebody. So
I once had a physician say, "I'll tell you what, Lonnie," because I was waffling on something, and she said, "When your symptoms are bad enough, it'll bring you back to me." And I thought, well. That's a really black and white way to look at it, but
yep.
Yeah, it is true. It's just that, some people, if you're headstrong or you're less experienced or whatever it might be, you do need to think about what am I doing? Like it is toward what end? Like Darrell said, you're not going to regress to zero.
Yeah.
Most people that are really experienced lifters, they could take weeks off. Are they going to lose a little strength? Yeah, but there's no way they're going to regress to zero. It's probably going to be good for them. Hormonally, metabolically, orthopedically, all of the above.
In the age thing, I think that's where I do agree with you. And it's because at this age in our training careers, we've had enough little things that hurt. And we know that if you take 2 weeks off, I'll be fine. We have that vocabulary with it. We know that we won't. Hell, like Mike said, we might even come back stronger if it's only 2 weeks. Because our bodies are actually recovered for once.
Right. I've had that conversation with my wife many times over the years. Like, well, what's the logical outcome of this? MRI scan. And if I'm pretty sure, like I was really sure with my ankle and my triceps, like it was torn,
Yeah.
Right, you turn black and blue. Like,
yes, exactly.
12-inch either way around that joint, but what's the option? It's surgery. It's mega expensive, protracted surgery.
Yep.
And so, that's one of the things that helps me make that decision is if it's just niggling pain, like my shoulder lately, I know that'll resolve. I don't know how I know. It's not even important for me to realize, is it something more intrinsic to the joint? Is it my anterior delt? I don't know. I don't really care. But I know from experience that kind of pain is going to go away. That's not going to lead to catastrophic surgery. And I don't want to have to go pay for an MRI and everything because this is going to go away.
Yes.
So there is that. Everybody's got to make some level of judgment, I think. I mean, obviously the safe advice to all of the listeners is, just go check with your MD and get a referral to a sports specialist if you can.
Well, that's like you've talked about too, Phil, is that I think that's the advantage of being older is, you probably have a lot more mileage on the system. It's, age is obviously a component too, but mileage is a huge component, compared to someone who started lifting 5 years ago versus someone who's been lifting for 3 decades, even if they're the same age. And then also knowing when to kind of strain under a load and knowing that high amount of tension is okay versus not okay. I feel like for me, that took me way too long to learn because now on a good day, you'll be able to be like, okay, I can finish this lift. I got it. It may look horrible, but I know for sure it's fine. There's no risk of injury. Or other times, like, on a deadlift, it gets 2 inches off the ground and you're like, nope, not there at all today.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's finding that vocabulary at those times where it's like when to pull through that. When is it okay? Like there are lifts that I've taken in training where I'll just tell my partners to take it that I would not say that in a meet.
Yes, and that's training versus a meet.
Yeah, and I'll have them take it because it's like, okay, there's a 90% chance I'll make that, but there's a 10% chance something's blowing up.
Right.
It's not worth it in training. In the meet, I'd take it. It's like, go ahead and take it, guys. And they're like, what? You're moving fine. Nope, something's wrong. And but like you said, that's a vocabulary that comes with age. That comes with just knowledge and age. And
that is reps.
The bad thing is in reps, and The bad thing is I think it's like I don't know an elite level strongman or powerlifter that like hasn't had major injury.
Yeah.
And I think it's just something you have to go through to get there.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. It's just like training, like we've talked about. Like when we all started training, we did stupid shit. And so as coaches, we try and not get people to do stupid shit. But there's a certain amount of stupid shit you need to do to figure out your limits. That's the hard part. It's like you can't skip it all. They have to at some point. Like we all did that dumbass training where we're running the rack and we're doing multiple drop sets and shit like that. Like you learn, okay, I can do that. Should I do that? Was it actually beneficial? Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, better when you're young.
But we know our limits. Yeah, that's also how you learn your like most people that come into strength sports don't fail at a load. They don't physically fail, they mentally fail less. Because they just don't know how to pull it out. They don't know that the amount of strain they have to give. And it feels a lot like catastrophic failure. There's a fine line between really hard straining and real pain. And the only way to learn that is through miles, man.
Well, it's the intangibles, right? Like Mike, like you said, you start to pull in a barbell, you're like, nope. At least a half a dozen times in my life, I've done the nope and walked out, and I probably saved some catastrophic blowout.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And that's wisdom, maybe.
Yep.
You might say, oh, wimp, especially in the bodybuilding mentality, drive through it, push through it, but no, I think I'm pretty sure. And can I prove it? No. Right. Yeah. Because if I saved something, maybe a few weeks went by and I got enough protein and collagen and vitamin C or whatever in me and I recovered and but had I done it that day, it would have been real ugly. Yeah. And so I don't know how to teach that. Like you said, I like the term vocabulary that you used. It becomes part of your vocabulary and you're like, nope, because anybody who'd be like, even if you're there with a training partner, now that's a little bit extra responsibility, but it's like, listen, I don't know. Something's telling me no, I'm going to say no. And unless you're doing that monthly, that's a problem probably.
Yeah.
But you can't make it an excuse either. But I do think that is part of the vocabulary you learn.
Yeah.
And the only one thing I have noticed that I wish I would have known earlier is that if the person's movement overall and like a subconscious movement like gait or running is good, at least in my experience, it appears they can strain much more safely under load if their gait or their underlying movement is kind of off a little bit. And there's obviously huge exceptions to this from their norm. Yeah, in those days, I get really nervous about them straining. So I'll watch them. Like when I trained people in the gym, they thought I was some weird hydration person because I'd tell them to go get a drink of water all the time. And it was just an excuse to watch them walk without thinking someone's watching them. And you'd see them kind of, the right hip's not doing extension. Then, okay, let's change this. And then if we kept going up in load and their gait pattern, everything stayed pretty good, then I felt more confident and safe that it's probably going to go okay. And again, sometimes it just goes right off a cliff and there isn't anything you can do. But that was like one thing I wish I would have looked at sooner to try to get some idea of what's going on.
That's about all I got.
No, it's good. Good stuff.
So, I will tell you on the coffee thing, you guys should try this. I was going to bring it up earlier and I forgot. The one thing we've started doing is we are roasting our own coffee now.
Oh.
You should try it. You can do it in your air fryer.
Really?
Oh. Yeah. So basically, I went to my buddy's total coffee nerd. And let's say he's roasted coffee forever. Like he won coffee review and roaster of the year. And basically, he turned me on to where he orders his beans from. And he's like, yeah, just order beans and roast them up. And it's half as much. It's like really good coffee for half as much as you'd normally buy it because it's not roasted. But it's fun. It's fun to try, mess around with. I'm going to go a little darker today.
Right.
And I'm going to go a little lighter today. But, yeah, if you haven't tried it.
How long does it typically take?
I throw it in the air fryer for like 20 minutes.
Oh, that's not long at all.
Yeah, and then you just grind it up. Or you can do it in the oven. Like there's certain temperatures. If you just Google it, there's certain temperatures you need to hit for certain roasts.
Right. It's a hobby kind of.
Yeah. And it's like, if I screw it up, I screwed up a pound of coffee. I've wasted $5 on worse.
No doubt.
But it's fun to try.
Doubt.
It's like, oh, here, we got this taste out of it. We got that taste out of it. So I am not him, but again, he has thousands of hours into it. So he can just sit there and listen to beans and be like, oh, okay, they're right here. Just talking to the beans. Yeah, exactly.
Bean whisperer.
Did you hear that? That was the second pop. No, I didn't notice that, but yeah. So,
I got nothing.
Yeah.
That's cool though. I never thought about actually doing that.
Oh, it's fun. Yeah, it's just something you can do. Hell, my wife's done it in a cast iron pan. You just sit there and stir beans until they're a certain color. However you want to do it. But
no, that's cool.
All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna get ready to go squat.
Squat.
All right.
Catch you later.
I'll see you.
See you.
Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community.
The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.